Welcome to part 7 of this video series where we try to beat the artificial intelligence on the difficulty level of Deity. Now in the last part we have cleared the continent of the Norwegian Empire. As you can see in the south of this continent there seems to be still some remains of the Norwegian civilization, but for the time being we are happy that at least we got rid of all the neighboring cities, therefore they don't push out any more city pressure, and our cities are saved from flipping all the time. Now the next strategic goal in terms of warfare naturally would be the Scythian Empire. At least at the moment the Scythian Empire is the only civilization with shared borders. We yet still don't know about the location of the Japanese as well as the Egyptian Empire. We just know that at least Egypt should be very strong. We saw it before in the score. But even though they don't like us, as long as they don't attack us, we really don't care for them at the moment. Now, a little bit of an issue about marching towards the north is that our civilization is already very unhappy, and going from one war into another does certainly not make the civilization and the population more happy, but it's kind of the thing we have to do. We have to ignore the unhappiness, and in case that there will be a little rebellion and the spawning of some barbarian units, then well, we have to live with it and we have to deal with them. Now a little bit fast forward, I moved most of my units to the northern borders with the Scythian Empire and I declared a war. And the war against the Scythian Empire, I have to say, is even more one-sided than against the Norwegian Empire. While Scythia has quite a nice marine, so they have some ships, their land units are really super low tech. So while I have machine guns and artillery units, they still have crossbowmans. So this is a difference of 2 tech levels, 2 tier levels. So basically the Scythian Empire shouldn't have any chance in a face-to-face war against myself. Still, in comparison to the last war, there are some issues. The cities are really laid out in a defensive line. For instance, there's also a defensive district, and all the cities now also have city walls. So it might had been a struggle to take the cities if I didn't have these high-level units. But like I said, the difference in unit tiers and technology is just too large, so taking those Scythian cities, at least at the moment, shouldn't be much of a problem. And here we actually see some units of the Scythian Empire flooding over the borders, but even those knights, which are kinda low level at the moment, are higher tier than those horsemen. So yeah, just imagine an artillery fighting against crossbowmen. This does not seem to be a fair match. The most worrisome part about all of this is that the time in which I take those cities is like very fast, and a fast growing civilization means you don't have a lot of opportunity to create amenities and or entertainment and to make your city happy. And this, as you can see, pretty much all my cities are unhappy. And yeah, so what I have to do at the moment is to build entertainment districts pretty much everywhere in order to maintain the happiness and the civil order within my cities. But now let's skip a bit forward once again, and as you can see here, it wasn't actually that easy to siege down these cities. The biggest problem, like I said before, was that the buildings, the districts and the cities, they can strike back, and while the units of Scythia were really bad, I mean, the city still can dish out a lot of damage. And here you can see this machine gun unit. It is nearly dead. It's a level 7 unit, so it would be very sad to lose it. But anyways, if we look at the fortifications of Gelonus, well, they are pretty much gone, and even though this knight unit does not have any life, if I'm able to siege down these walls, this knight unit will be capable of capturing Gelonus. And here we go. So the next city we are aiming for is a bit to the west. It's called Porkova, I think. And the only way for the Scythian Empire to defend this city is based on this war district as well as on the city defenses. Like, the units are pretty much useless, even though at least this musketman unit is a little bit more high tier, so it's still not on the same level as my units, but it's not as bad as these horsemen which we saw before. But as you saw here, like one shot of the artillery completely deleted the whole city walls of Porkova. And now I think 2 turns later we capture Porkova. Very easy, no problem at all. And by that we also captured a little world wonder, the Terracotta Army, I think. But it is pretty much useless, since similar to the pyramids, it gives you a bonus the moment you build it. So when you build it, I think all your units get 1 level of experience. Hopefully I'm not wrong with that, but pretty sure that it only gives you a nice bonus the moment you build it. So if you capture it later on in the game, it will just give you some smaller bonuses, so it's not that great of a deal. More important is that Porkova now does not put any city pressure on Gelonus anymore. Both of the cities are fine in terms of loyalty. A bit crazy appears to be the amount of apostles of both the Japanese Empire as well as of the Egyptian Empire flooding into my land. Since we are not in war yet, this is their only opportunity basically to invade me, and in order to maintain this peace and in order to keep them out of my land, you see me here settling down on the west coast, because I really don't want these foreign civilizations which are located on another continent to settle down on my continent. So if you have close borders to another civilization, it always creates tension, and I think at the moment I would have some problems with facing the Egyptian Empire. At least I'm kind of worried that the Egyptian Empire is very strong. We just saw it here. They had a ship with like the upgrade that it can form armadas. I think that's how it's called. So it's the possibility to stack 3 units on each other. So the Egyptian Empire is, in terms of cultural technology, they seem to be far ahead of me. So in terms of scientific technology, I think I might be leading, or I should be at least not too far behind. So if we look closely on the northern warfront, you can see that I now already built the first tanks, and I would say the game is now going into the end game, at least in terms of technology. So tanks are, I would say, the first melee unit which is really worth to buy, and usually I just build melee units to capture cities and or to defend, but with tanks they are so strong and so tough. It is the first melee unit which is worth to utilize as a regular fighting unit, and before of that I usually only use range units for cleaning the enemy lines and stuff like that. Now what you also just saw is, in terms of the macro game, I just reached a golden age, so it gives me some nice benefits. And yeah, also with so many cities you see a lot of great personalities popping up, so it's very hard for me to comment on which personalities are popping up and what world wonders are created. But I would say the importance of these personalities and world wonders decreases with the amount of time you have played. So in the early game, if you get a world wonder like the Petra, it is really significant because you have 3 or 4 cities, and the Petra dramatically boosts the production output or the food output of one of your cities. Later on, if you have like 20 cities, having a boost on one of your cities is not that much of a deal. Of course, it's always nice to get world wonders, no matter the stage of game you're in. But getting some of the early world wonders is usually something which can really bring you ahead in a game. Now, there are also some other indicators that we are slowly reaching the end game, and I think one very strong indicator for that is the radioactive symbol you see popping up everywhere on the map. So it's the uranium, and of course it is the prerequisite for nuclear bombs. And usually I don't like to play with nuclear bombs, but since games on high levels of difficulty tend to get static in the end game, I might go for nuclear bombs actually in this game. Another cool thing which we also just researched is the possibility to construct apartment complexes. Now in Civilization 6, even if you have enough food and your civilization is well fed, they also need living space in order that your city can grow. So your city usually has a natural border, and if you want to grow your city, for instance, larger than 10 or 11, you have to construct specific buildings. And at some points of the game, there are no more buildings within the districts which you can build. So in order to increase the housing space, you have to build specific districts. They take one tile, and so for instance the apartment districts, or earlier in the game the aqueducts, and then you can add population to your cities. And the amount of population you get from these apartment districts depends on the quality of the land where you build it. For instance, if you build a apartment complex close to a natural wonder, the area has a very high appeal, and people will like to live there, and therefore the amount of living space you can get from an apartment complex can go up to 6. And now, if you saw the earlier videos, you might understand why I always complain that the computer builds the cities very close to each other. Now in Civ 6, your cities have to build districts. Now in the end game you might have a city with 4 or 5 districts. So already 4 or 5 of your tiles are gone. Now you also have to construct apartment complexes. Now let's say a good city with a size of 30 needs like 3 or 4 apartment districts. Okay, so we already have like 10 tiles which are used for districts and apartment complexes. And now you still need a lot of tiles for your farms to keep your civilization well fed. So now if you have overlapping cities which share their fields, you will really have problems to increase the size of your cities. And to find place for instance, mines which boost your production, or for world wonders. So you will really struggle. So what I tend to do is, if these cities which I capture from the computer are too close to each other, then sometimes I just raise down some of the cities. Because like I said, they are just too close to each other, they are overlapping, they are competing for the same tiles, so it gets really problematic. Now in the meantime, I've sieged down Neapolis, and as you can see here, we basically don't have any problems with sieging down the Scythian Empire and conquering all the cities. So what I will do now here is I will accelerate everything, and I will just show you the capturing of all these cities. So for instance, here we see the last hours of Kostrovskaya, and well, as you can see here, I decided to not capture the city but raze it down. Then it didn't take a long time until I sieged on Myriv. You see, one shot from the artillery and pretty much the whole city was gone. And as you can see here, I also now have battle tanks, and they are pretty much the best unit in the game. So aside from probably nukes, there is no better unit than the battle tanks. And finally we march towards Soloka, as you can see right here. The Scythian Empire even has some frigates to defend, but my battle tanks are just too strong. And in comparison to the Norwegian Empire, which is still alive, this was actually the last city of the Scythian Empire, so they are completely erased out of the game. And with that, I'm pretty much in total control of my home continent.